Let's bring in now John Longworth, co-chairman of Leave Means Leave and former Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce. What's your reaction to the proposals from the government?
Well, I think the government's taking a very pragmatic view. I mean, we don't want to have a border between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland. We have never had that border because of historical reasons. So there's no reason why we should have it in the future. And it's quite a smart move on behalf of the government. I mean, I would describe it slightly differently than Faisal. Rather than shifting the blame, I would say showing the European Union up for what they are. Just as, of course, the government's proposals for citizens' rights, for residency rules, showed the European Union up for what they are, because the way the European Union reacted to that, and possibly the way it will react to this, will determine, you know, what sort of club are they? Would you ever want to be a member of a club that behaves in the way that they do?
But the EU's decision is going to affect a huge number of people in the island of Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland, as well as in Northern Ireland. And we heard from Ireland's Foreign Minister a short while ago, and he said, you know, whilst overall he's welcoming the fact that they're getting clarity on a lot of issues, that the delivery on these aspirations is going to be really difficult.
Well, of course, it can be as difficult as Brussels wish to make it. The fact of the matter is that these things are rather simple in reality. The administrative process of customs, of course, is a complicated one anyway. But we trade with the rest of the world perfectly well under World Trade Organization rules, and we have rather smooth and slick customs arrangements.
But we don't have a land border between those countries, do we? And we don't have a land border which has a really crucial role in a peace process that's taken, you know, so many years to get right.
Well, the government's put forward a very reasonable view of how this should be resolved, and it's now up to the Republic of Ireland and Brussels to respond to that. The one thing we must, of course, make sure in all these things is we can't let the Irish tail wag the UK dog. The fact of the matter is that we shouldn't agree to anything, including the new customs arrangements and the interim arrangements, which seem to have no end, seem to be more of a tunnel than a bridge, a tunnel without light at the end. We can't allow any of those things to prevent the UK from crystallising the real benefits of Brexit, which the government should actually embrace and declare this autumn. Whether or not we reach a negotiated settlement, the UK economy can be better than it is now. We can be richer than we are now, but we have to adopt the real benefits of Brexit. And what we can't allow is for Brussels to restrict us from doing that. And we can't allow things like the border between the north and the south of Ireland to be that problem.
What do you think the benefit of Brexit is to those who trade across the border? We spoke to some people who work in haulage earlier today on Sky News. They're not seeing the benefit at the moment. Enormous uncertainty for them at the moment.
Huge. Well, the government can dissipate the uncertainty by making clear what the post-Brexit economy will look like, and they ought to do that in the autumn statement in the November budget. So business will have complete certainty from that point onwards.
But they just don't know how they're going to operate at the moment, do they? They don't know whether they're going to have to cross some kind of physical border. They don't know.
Well, they can make that. They can make that completely clear. It's giving them uncertainty
at a time when they need certainty.
No, we can have certainty. The government can make it clear, because these things are unilaterally in the gift of the government to provide the things that create benefit in the EU. Reform of the CAP, repatriation of fisheries, the better use of our net contribution to invest in infrastructure, for example, digital infrastructure, and invest in tax breaks for business.
I'm not asking you about fishing. I'm asking you about the land border, Northern Ireland, and the businesses on that border, how they are going to be affected by this.
Well, the government can make it clear what the post-Brexit situation will be, whether or not we reach a negotiated settlement. And we actually trade with countries all around the world without any let or hindrance, other than some administrative rules. We're making very heavy weather of this, so it's perfectly possible to trade across that border, whatever happens. But the government have made it clear that we're not actually going to put up border posts or any restrictions on that border, whatever the EU does. So that's a bit of clarity already.
But what if the EU says that it wants border posts? What are we going to do, just pull out of Brexit?
Well, that will be for them to choose. If they want to impose border posts going the other way, that's up to them. But
it's still affecting those trying to work across the border,
yes,
isn't it?
Of course.
Whoever decides, the hauliers, whoever decides, that's not going to affect the hauliers, is it?
There will be a small administrative issue under WTO rules of transporting goods from Northern Ireland to the south, if that happens. But that takes place all around the world perfectly satisfactorily, and most of the trade that the EU does with the world, including with the USA, China, India, etc., takes place under WTO rules and the normal administrative processes that they actually have in place. There is nothing wrong with that, and compared with the enormous benefits that we can crystallise by leaving the single market and the customs union that will boost the UK economy, it's a small price to pay.
What impact do you think Brexit has had on farming so far? We've had a lot of reports over the summer from farmers who've really struggled to get people to pick their fruit, for example, and they're very, very concerned about the autumn coming up.
Well, there's a lot of scaremongering in this. We always had seasonal labour, but of course that seasonal labour used to go home at the end of the season, and there's no reason why that shouldn't continue. It will also encourage, of course, productivity improvement in farming as machinery is introduced rather than pickers. But the fact of the matter is, and the really important point is, when we leave the European Union, we can remove the common external tariffs that the EU force us to apply, and food prices will fall. That will be better off for hard-working families in the UK, it will provide them with more disposable income, and it will boost the economy. Now, what's wrong with that? Well,
that's the opposite of what a lot of the farmers say, because they say if they're going to have to employ people from the UK, wages will have to be higher, and actually the price of fruit will go up.
Well, no, price of fruit will go down after we leave the EU, because we'll be able to remove the tariffs, the 40% tariffs. You know, the tariff that the EU makes us apply to canned peaches to actually protect Italian peach producers is 75%. The fact of the matter is, we will have cheaper food when we leave the EU because we'll be able to remove external tariffs.
Do they put tariffs on British strawberries?
We can support British farmers through stewardship of the land grants, but the fact is we will be operating at world prices, which is cheaper than the protectionist European zone, and at the same time we'll be able to help developing countries in places like Africa and South America, who at the moment are downtrodden by the European Union because they're not allowed to produce product and export it to the EU because of the extremely high tariffs that the EU apply to those products.
Okay, John Longworth, thanks very much for coming on today.